What's going on, guys? Leyvi here and welcome back to yet another Albion Online video. Today I'm going to show you a Fire Mage build for solo dungeons. You can play this build at any level, so even if you are a very new player and wish to set the world ablaze, this build will help you start doing that. The build I will share with you today is affordable, easy to play and fast in clearing. It covers energy and health sustain from multiple sources so that you can smoothly clear the dungeons without any downtime. The offensive abilities also have low cooldowns, so you will be able to spam skills for the majority of the time. And the build makes use of the highest offensive stats possible on the chest piece, which increases your damage by a lot and speeds things up. The build is as follows. In the current market, this is a very affordable loadout, but the prices of different items in Albion Online change continuously. Luckily, there is only one item in this entire build that is an artifact, the chest piece. Whether this piece will still be as affordable if you watch this video at a later time, that I cannot guarantee. Nonetheless, I will go over item alternatives throughout this video, so even if something becomes expensive at some point, you will know exactly what you can change about this build to make it effective, yet affordable once again. Whilst explaining everything there is to about this build, I will be doing a tier 6 dungeon map around Carleon, which is close to a tier 7 in difficulty because of the dungeon map modifiers. I think that having a set equal to the tier of the dungeon gives you realistic expectations and doesn't make the build seem better than it is. Therefore, I will be using gear that puts me on the item power of a tier 7 set, since that's the difficulty I will be doing. So if you do tier 4 dungeons with a tier 4 set, or tier 8 dungeons with a tier 8 set, you can expect the same results. Now, since I do have masteries in my armors already, I will have to wear lower tiers. But for my weapon, I'm using a tier 6.1 since I don't have any levels in there. In this build, you play the Great Fire Staff, which makes for fast clearing due to low cooldowns and a lot of AoE damage. On the Q, you want to take Burning Field, which does exactly what the name says, in which you throw a burning field on the ground that does damage on contact, followed by additional damage every half a second, as long as the mobs stay on the field. It's important you keep the mobs on the burning field as you clear the dungeon to utilize this ability as much as possible. Since this ability has very low cooldown, you'll be using it continuously, so the sooner you get a feel for how to make the best use of this ability, the faster your dungeon runs will be. The field lasts as long as the cooldown itself, so you could pretty much keep it up all the time during boss fights. If, however, you have difficulties with certain bosses and can't keep them in one place because you need to kite, then I suggest you swap to Firebolt for those specific fights. On the W, you want to take Fireball, which is another AoE ability that does damage on contact, but also does damage over time. Now this dot takes on the enemies themselves, so they don't have to stand still in one place, unlike the Burning Field. This ability is unlocked at level 40, so what I would do is use Wall of Flames until you unlock Fire Wave, and then use Fire Wave until you unlock Fireball. These two abilities aren't as powerful as the Fireball, yet decent options until you unlock it. The special ability of the Great Fire Staff is Flame Pillar, and after a short delay after casting it, you deal AoE damage on all targets hit. Since there is a delay to it, you need to be sure the targets are at the location of damage, which might take some time and practice for you to get used to. But the most amazing thing about this ability is that it only has a 10-second cooldown, which is a very low cooldown for a special ability. This allows you to have a rotation that you can use on about every mob pack whilst clearing the dungeons. What I like to do is open with the Flame Pillar from a distance. Since the mobs aren't aggroed yet, they won't be moving, and the delay of the Flame Pillar won't be as annoying since it will be a guaranteed hit. As soon as the mobs receive damage from the Flame Pillar, they will start moving, which is an excellent time to cast Fireball as they run towards you. Once you've done that, simply throw a burning field in front of you and start auto-attacking if you have to. This rotation is simply amazing and will quickly get rid of any mob pack. Your helmet is your main energy source, in which you take the Scholar Cowl, which has the energy shield ability on it. Whenever you take damage whilst this ability is active, you regain energy and your resistances also get increased. Even if you don't need any energy, it can still be good to use this ability during tough fights for the extra defenses. Your chest piece is the cultist robe, which you mostly want to take for the offensive stats. Nonetheless, the levitate ability this robe has heals you for almost 2 health pots worth of HP, so it can be a really useful ability at times, especially during tough bosses. As for your shoes, you can go with any of the leather ones since you want to take the refreshing sprint ability for reduced cooldowns. The cape I like to use with this build is the Tedford cape, which adds an AoE damage to your auto attacks every time it's off cooldown. Cabbage soup as the choice in food, which makes for health sustain in between the packs, and poison potions for the bosses to do some extra damage and reduce their resistances. You can make this build both cheaper and more expensive, and that's what I will explain to you now. First of all, if you want to go budget, the first thing you need to do is swap out your Tedford cape for a regular cape. You will lose out on some AoE damage on your auto attacks every time it's off cooldown, but you will spare an enormous amount of money on your loadout. If the cultist robe ever becomes more expensive, or you simply want to go even more budget, you can swap it out for the Mage robe, which provides the same amount of offensive bonuses and is a non-artifact item, meaning it will always be cheap in comparison. You can also take the Cleric robe, which has slightly less offensive stats, but a much more useful ability that can help you out during bosses. Feel free to take any of the boots you wish to level with this build, as the impact of it isn't something major. Among them, the cooldown reduction is the best option for this purpose, but if you want to level a cloth or plate piece, you might get more value using those. I personally like running solo dungeons with Avalonian Beef Stew since it increases my damage while still providing health sustain, but these are pretty expensive, so if you want to clear slightly faster for the cost of extra silver, you could consider this food. I like to use solo dungeon builds which are affordable, effective and chill to play, and I think this build provides exactly that. You could go for a more active playstyle in which you take the Druid robe for slightly more DPS, but this would require an entire different build altogether in which you have to replace your energy source and everything else. Therefore, I think this build is an amazing one for anyone that's interested in playing with fire. If you think this video is fire as well, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't yet. You will find a wide variety of Albion Online content on my channel, and I also do my best to upload at least 2 new videos every week. I hope this video brought you value, and I'll see you next time.